You don't fear death, how could you? You've met him on 1,000 different battlefields, in 1,000 different uniforms, and every single time he passed you by. You are the unkillable soldier. You don't know why your wounds heal in minutes, or why time refuses to age your face. All you know is that for 3,000 years, whenever humanity decided to bleed, you were handed a weapon and told to stand in the front line. And your nightmare began under a burning Greek sun. It's 480 BC. You are standing in a narrow mountain pass called Thermopylae. To your left and right are 300 Spartans, their bronze shields locked together to form an unbroken wall of metal. Hollywood tells you that ancient war was about glory and beautiful speeches. They lied. Ancient war is suffocating. The dust kicked up by the Persian army is so thick you can taste the dirt in your lungs. The heat inside your bronze helmet is intense, sweat stinging your eyes. Through the tiny eye slits of your visor, you see a cloud of arrows blot out the sun completely, turning the sky pitch black. You brace your shoulder against the cold bronze of your shield. Thwack. An arrow slams into the wood inches from your face. You do not flinch. You know the shield wall can hold against arrows, but then the real terror begins. The arrows stop, and the heavy infantry hits your line. It's not a movie fight with clean sword duels. It's a human car crash. Hundreds of tons of muscle and bronze slam into your chest, throwing you backward. The sheer weight of the crowd is crushing the air straight out of your ribs. You can't even swing your spear. There's no room. You are trapped in a mass of screaming men, and then you feel a cold piece of iron slide directly into your side. You fall to the ground, trampled under 100 sandals. The world goes gray, then black. You expect this to be the end. You hope it is. But 20 minutes later, your eyes snap open. The battle has moved past you. You pull yourself out of the mud and look at your torso. The gaping wound is already closing, the flesh knitting itself back together like a zipper.
Don't let them retreat.
You stand up among the fallen, a ghost in a graveyard. You realize your first terrifying truth. You can feel all the agonizing pain of dying, but you are denied the peace of a grave. You throw away your broken shield and walk away from the battlefield, vowing to never pick up a weapon again. You promise yourself you will hide in a quiet village and live in peace, but you forget who you live among. Humanity cannot stay peaceful for long. 1,500 years flash by in a blink, and suddenly you find yourself standing in the freezing mud outside a massive French castle, holding a heavy iron broadsword, as a rain of flaming arrows falls from the sky. The age of bronze was over. The age of knights had begun. And it was going to be much, much bloodier. You quickly learn that humanity's memory is short, but its appetite for blood is infinite. 1,500 years passed like a blur of dynamic borders and forgotten kings. You tried to live as a hermit, hiding in the deep forests of Europe, hoping the world would outgrow its love for the blade. But by the turn of the 11th century, a new madness swept the continent. A holy war. They called it a crusade. And because you still looked 25, the local feudal lord did not give you a choice. You were handed a heavy iron broadsword and marched into the blinding sands of the Levant. If you think ancient bronze combat was suffocating, medieval steel is a living tomb. You are encased in 80 pounds of riveted chainmail and plate armor. Inside your iron helmet, the desert heat multiplies until your skin feels like it's boiling. Your field of vision is restricted to 2 tiny horizontal slits. You cannot see who is coming from your left or right. You can only look straight ahead. Every breath you take breathes in the scorched, recycled air of your own lungs. And on the horizon, the walls of Jerusalem rise, not as a holy sanctuary, but as a meat grinder made of stone. You march toward the city walls under a rain of boiling oil and pitch. Splat. A nearby soldier is hit, his silhouette collapsing instantly. You do not look down. In this armor, if you stop moving, you become an iron coffin. You reach the wooden siege ladder and begin to climb, your iron gloves gripping the rungs. When you reach the top of the stone wall, an enemy defender strikes you directly in the chest with a heavy iron mace. The impact does not just shatter your armor, it breaks your ribs and sends you flying backward off the wall, plunging 50 feet straight down into the rocky ditch below. Any mortal man would be a broken sack of bone and flesh. For you, it's just another Tuesday. You lie in the ditch for 10 minutes as the battle rages above you. Inside your chest, your lungs reinflate. Your broken spine snaps back into perfect alignment with a series of sickening clicks. You pull yourself up, dented armor screaming against your skin, and look around. The ditch is filled with silent silhouettes who did not get a second chance. You realize your second terrible truth. You are a parasite of history. You are forced to survive the absolute worst moments of human behavior over and over again with no option to exit. You walk away from the smoking ruins of Jerusalem, discarding your heavy sword in the sand. You cross oceans, trying to find a corner of the map where the iron bells of war do not ring. But the map is shrinking. 700 years bleed away, and the cold steel of the broadsword is replaced by the volatile stench of black powder. You find yourself standing in a rigid, colorful line in the freezing woods of the New World. The era of chivalry was dead. The era of gunpowder had arrived. And now, death could find you from hundreds of yards away. By the 18th century, humanity had stripped away the last remaining illusions of battlefield honor. Chivalry was buried under a mountain of black powder. War was no longer a chaotic melee of shields and swords. It had become a machine, cold, synchronized, and mathematical. You were no longer expected to think, or to run, or to duel. You were just a single gear in a firing line. And for the first time in your 3,000-year life, death did not have to look you in the eye to take you down. It could find you across a field, wrapped in a tiny, whistling ball of lead. The tactics of this era defy all human survival instincts. You are ordered to stand shoulder to shoulder, matching the elbows of the men next to you, forming a wall of bright fabric and exposed skin. You watch a row of hundreds of enemy soldiers level their muskets directly at your chest from less than 80 yards away. You are forbidden from breaking formation. You are forbidden from ducking. You stand perfectly still, staring down the black hollow circles of their barrels, waiting for the command to die. The tension does not build slowly. It suffocates you in a split second of absolute silence. Fire. The horizon disappears behind a blinding wall of white chemical smoke and flame.
Present!
A fraction of a second later, the volley hits your line. It sounds like a giant canvas sail ripping in two. Thwack, thwack. The men to your left and right drop instantly, their silhouettes vanishing from your peripheral vision. A lead ball punches cleanly through your chest, shattering your collarbone and tearing through your lung. The force slams you onto your back, and as you look up at the sky, a suffocating fog of sulfur smoke rolls over your face, blocking out the sun. Your mortal comrades are choking on their own blood, calling out for families they will never see again. But your body is already hard at work. Your lungs violently expel the trapped blood. Your shattered bones knit back together, the torn muscle fibers weaving tightly back into place like iron threads. Within 2 minutes, you pull yourself up from the bloody grass, coughing up the last of the sulfur. You pick up a discarded musket from the dirt. You realize your third terrible truth. Humanity's weapons are evolving faster than their wisdom, but no matter how efficiently they learn to kill, they can never build a bullet fast enough to set you free. You walk away from the smoking battlefields of the old world, crossing borders under fake names, trying to outrun the smell of gunpowder. But the century turns, and industrialized warfare sheds its bright uniforms. The colorful lines dissolve into the mud. You find yourself crouching in a wet, freezing ditch dug deep into the earth of France, surrounded by the deafening scream of metal artillery shells. The era of the musket was dead. The era of total war had arrived. And this time, the sky itself was going to rain fire. By the early 20th century, humanity had completely perfected the art of industrial slaughter. The battlefield was no longer a field at all. It was an endless labyrinth of wet, freezing mud dug straight into the bleeding flesh of France. War had shed its bright uniforms and colorful lines. Now, everything was gray, everything was brown, and everything was dead. You were no longer fighting a man you could see. You were fighting an industrialized assembly line designed to tear human tissue apart by the millions. You spend weeks crouching in a ditch 3 feet wide, surrounded by the constant, freezing drizzle of the European winter. The mud clings to your boots like wet cement, pulling you down with every step. The air inside the trench is a toxic soup of rotten food, wet canvas, and the sharp chemical stench of cordite. Above your head, a continuous storm of jagged iron artillery shells tears the sky to pieces. The sonic boom of the explosions is so violent that your teeth ache inside your skull. You realize that in this era, courage is completely meaningless. A piece of flying shrapnel from 5 miles away does not care if you are a coward or a Spartan. It just cuts you in half. T-R-R-R-R-T. The whistle blows. The command you've been dreading for months echoes through the mud. It's time to go over the top. You grip the wooden rungs of a crude ladder and climb out of the safety of the ditch, stepping directly into no man's land. The landscape is a flat, cratered nightmare lined with loops of sharp barbed wire. Tat, tat, tat. The machine gun fire is so dense it creates a literal wall of flying lead. You take 3 steps before a spray of high-velocity bullets punches cleanly through your stomach and chest, spinning you around and dropping you face first into a flooded shell crater. The water in the crater is thick with mud and sulfur. Your lungs fill with the toxic liquid as your body loses consciousness. Any other man stays in that mud forever, becoming just another nameless digit on a limestone monument. But your curse refuses to release you. Underwater, your shredded internal organs violently stitch themselves back together. Your lungs force out the mud, gasping and burning as they demand oxygen. You drag your heavy, waterlogged body out of the crater, wiping the black sludge from your face. You realize your fourth terrible truth. Humanity has finally built a world where the weapons are more efficient than nature itself. They are turning the planet into a factory of ghosts, and you are trapped on the assembly line. You crawl away from the trenches of France, changing your name yet again, fleeing into the shadows of a new century. But you cannot outrun time, and you cannot outrun humanity's progress. The century turns, the mud dries, and the battlefield moves from the dirty trenches into the digital sky. You find yourself standing in the ruins of a modern city, holding a carbon fiber rifle, as silent, invisible eyes watch you from orbit. The era of the trenches was dead. The era of the algorithm had arrived. And this time, the weapons did not even need a human hand to pull the trigger. You quickly realized that the rules of war had changed forever. Humanity had finally built a world where they did not need to look for you in the mud. The battlefield was everywhere. A vast, invisible digital grid of satellites, biometrics, and facial recognition algorithms tracking every square inch of the planet. For 3,000 years, you survived by changing your name and moving to the next town. But in the modern age, anonymity was dead. The algorithm knew exactly who you were, and the global superpowers finally realized that a soldier who cannot die is the ultimate weapon. They tracked your digital footprint, they sent automated drones to corner you, and they prepared to lock you in a laboratory for the next millennium. But they forgot who they were hunting. You did not survive 10,000 years of human brutality by being caught in a concrete trap. You made a choice. The only winning move in a game that humanity built was to stop playing. You dropped your weapon into the dirt. You left your fake bank accounts behind. You turned your back on their smart cities, their global conflicts, and their flags. You walked north past the borders, past the cell towers where the grid permanently loses its sight. You sit alone on a shelf of ancient glacial ice at the edge of the world, looking up at the unblinking stars. You look back at the history you have witnessed. You watched the Stone Age rise and fall. You saw the Bronze Age bleed out. You watched Rome turn to ash, and you watched the trenches of France swallow millions. You realize that this modern digital empire humanity is so proud of, this world of internet, space travel, and artificial intelligence, is just another temporary phase. Eventually, the servers will go dark. The concrete cities will crumble, and the green forests will reclaim the highways. And you will be there to watch it happen. You are not running from humanity, you are simply outwaiting them. Mortal men spend their entire tiny, fragile lives chasing legacy, trying to build things that last, terrified of the dark. But you understand the ultimate truth of existence. True power is not about winning a war, owning the world, or being remembered by history. True power is time. You take a deep, slow breath of the freezing air. You close your eyes, lean your head back against the ancient ice, and prepare to take a very long nap. After all, you have nothing but time.